All right, welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen, and we're joined today by my co-host, Tony Colom. How's it going, Tony?
Great.
Good to see you, my friend. Looking fresh. What's the hat? What's the logo?
Florida Atlantic University. My cousin just signed to play football there, so
No
that's what
way.
it is. Go
Okay.
Owls.
The
Yes.
FAU Owls, right on. Okay. I,
Yep.
I know that.
Division 2, Division 3, what is that?
I
No,
think
that's
they
like
might be
Division One.
Division One actually
Wow.
now.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's
They
awesome.
were
Way to
kind of
go.
an obscure college that went big time.
Yeah, he was at Washington State, but then they had some changes there, obviously, the last year, and so he
Yeah.
moved down to Florida Atlantic instead.
It's
So
probably nicer weather in Florida than Washington, also. In
absolutely.
Pullman.
Yeah.
Well, we're joined today by my longtime friend, Ben Bauman. How's it going, Ben?
It is going great. Like Tony said.
Yeah,
It was,
man.
it was like a commercial for cereal way back in the day.
Good
No,
day.
today's a good day.
Good to have you on, man. Thanks for joining us today. Ben and I have known each other a long time. We're kind of those like people that like don't talk for months and then touch base and talk a little bit and then don't talk for months. And we've ridden motorcycles together a couple times. We were church planners kind of in the same region in Oregon for years. And so Ben is probably one of my friends that challenges me the most in my thinking. Every time I walk away from a conversation with Ben, my gears are grinding. He's got me thinking about things I hadn't thought about. And I think you like doing that to me. I think you like to say random things to get me off my game. But we're gonna ask Ben to kind of share just to start. Hey Ben, how did you like become a believer? What's your pathway into ministry? Kind of tell us your like the Ben Bauman origin story, and then we'll kind of get into your church plant.
Okay. I started following Jesus in my late teens and at McMinnville High School. And about that time, I was also kind of playing music and writing songs. And so getting close to graduation, I kind of wanted to go to a big music town. I actually visited LA and thought about New York. Hadn't gone to Nashville yet, but I didn't know really then that Christian music had kind of shifted from LA to Nashville, kind of a decade or so before that. I did eventually find that out. But so yeah, I was on that pathway to trying to do music. And the guy that was kind of helping disciple me mentioned that it might be good for me to get like 1 year. So just to do 1 year at one of these Bible colleges. And I said, well, I could do a year, and visited a few of them. Didn't really like any of them, but ended up getting like a scholarship to one of them in Idaho. And I thought, well, you know, I'll do that for a year and I still explore music and write music. And that turned into 4 years. And as you do. And in
That
that
happened to me at Ozark.
easy, man.
Same
I didn't
thing.
even like the campus. BBC was not pretty at the time. And but I got a 4 year degree and also met a guy that I would eventually move to Nashville, Tennessee with Scott Riggin, and he's still doing music quite a bit, worship leader. But we got a deal with Word Records before we ever moved, and then we spent time pursuing the music dream in Nashville, which is kind of what I wanted to do. Didn't really want to do ministry per se, but I wanted to do, music that mattered. And a lot of that was happening. We got some success early on, and I like to say that we made tens of dollars, and we were almost
And
famous on several occasions.
what was the name of your band?
The band was aptly put the Nobodies.
The Nobodies.
And we
Never heard
remained
of them. Never heard of
faithful
them.
to that
Yeah.
all the way through. I remember one concert we were doing, it was a festival in like Mississippi somewhere, and we were introduced as the Nose Buddies.
The Nose
The
Buddies.
nose buddies.
From that on, that's what we called ourselves, even though,
Before breathe right strips were a thing.
yeah, that's we were the Nose Buddies. And
Are you guys like on Spotify or anything? Can we check it out?
every once in a while, somebody will send me a link that they rediscover the music again.
Hmm.
Over the years, Scott has redone a lot of the music that we originally wrote.
Okay.
And so it kind of depends on the version you're going to get. We were reviewed pretty well. Yeah, it was the best like 8 years of my life.
Wow.
Both my kids were born in Tennessee. We love the people. We still have a lot of great relationships. We know a lot of people in the industry. when I go back, it's a lot of fun. And we miss some of the family. We had a great church there, and that church that we were part of kind of leads me to the next part of my life, because after the deals kind of ended, this is, post Napster and all that stuff that happened in the early 2000s, shut down a lot of Music Row. It really, like, it just took the kind of wind out of the sails for
Mm.
years. I had a 4-year deal. I lost my last 2 years on my writing deal.
Mm.
And I was just kind of spinning my wheels. I was working as an IT guy at a downtown office in Nashville, and I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. I didn't know that I wanted to do ministry per se, but I didn't know that I wanted to help people with their dumb printer problems for the rest of my life. I was
Mhm.
making good money. We were living south of Nashville. Both kids, my wife, stay-at-home mom, and from her perspective, she loves it, and I was the one that like rocked the boat. So I sat with my pastor. He's still the pastor of Lakeshore Christian, and I think their main campus is Antioch. And I just said, I just don't know that I'm supposed to be doing IT work the rest of my life. It seems weird. And he said, well, have you, when you're in Bible college, did you do any ministry? And I said, yeah, I had a couple of youth ministry things that I did, and I liked that. I was still young. I was in my, late 20s, and I thought I could do that. Then we started looking around at a couple of things, but one of them was a lot of openings. Salaries were low, and I'm like,
In ministry?
from $80,000 and all the benefits and 401ks to back then $80,000 was a lot.
That's a
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
And
That's still a lot, man.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
some of
Right.
us.
I'm trying to say, like,
Back then.
to go with $30,000. My wife and I thought, we can't do that. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I can't be a lead guy. I've never done it. I've never done worship. I never really did worship leading or
Huh.
anything like that. I was a guitar player. So then my lead pastor said, have you thought about church planting? I said, I don't even know what that is. And he's like, well, there's this group, and they're trying to get this church plant started in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And I said, I don't really even know what this is. You start a church, what do you do? And then they start talking about fundraising. I'm like, nope, I want nothing to do with that. And the guy's like, well, um, just bear with me. He was trying to get his hooks in. He says, like, where, do you want to be in this area, or you want to go back to the Northwest? And I said, well, eventually I'd like to go back to the Northwest, because I think that's how I'm wired. I mean, the church scene in the South is so much different. And
Mhm.
I just, I wasn't ready for that. That kind of ministry was just, you can just tell the difference when you're in those churches and you come out to the Northwest. It's just a radical difference.
And
What
you're
is that?
you're from Oregon, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
were a transplant in
right.
Tennessee, and so you could really feel the difference culturally
Oh
there.
yeah. Well, just the sheer amount of church buildings,
Right.
not small church buildings either.
Right.
Like in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, where they were talking about planting, I drove around and just went, they don't need another. You know what I mean? It's like and I realized I didn't go through and look at how many people were in each Sunday morning. It just, like, the optic wasn't good.
Right.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know. And then, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but they said, you know what? Talk to this guy. He's in the Northwest, but he's from Indianapolis, and they're trying to do this planting on the Northwest, and it's a whole different animal. Give this guy Jim a call. So I give this guy Jim a call, and we just hit it off right away. And he's like,
Jim
I
is a
see what
great
you're
guy.
saying. Maybe you're not ready for a lead plant role.
Yeah.
He said, you are probably, but you don't think you are. So I'd never preached a sermon except Bible college at that point.
Serious?
Never
Wow.
led a worship service. So I knew youth ministry, but I was an IT guy. And Jim's like, hey, let's fly you out to Seattle, and I want to introduce you to this couple that they're campus ministers, and they're moving to what was called Maple Valley, Washington, which is a suburb of
Mhm.
Seattle. And there's like
Mhm.
Black Diamond and Renton, and
Mhm.
basically it was an up and coming community that really wasn't even a city at that point. It was like just like lots of expensive houses being built, and people were working for Boeing or Amazon or what's the other big company up there? Oh,
Starbucks.
Microsoft.
Oh.
Literally, the church had like all these 100,000 plus earners and a lot of young people. And so it was a good time to hit it for planting. I didn't know all the strategy, but we ended up saying yes to that one. My wife was not super happy about that, because I asked all the people in my life to pray about it, and they said, you're supposed to do this. So I kind of jumped in as a secondary, like the second planter and a worship leader. Obviously, that's what the couple really needed. And it rocked for 3 years. That church plant took off, and we were at like 350 or something like that within very short time. And then that guy Jim called me up again, and he's like, "Okay, you know how to do this now. Need you to come to Oregon, which is where you're from. We need a
Mm,
native, and we're doing this partnership with Monmouth Christian, which is, kind of this historic church in Monmouth,
Mhm.
even before the
mhm,
town was like, before Oregon was a state, kind of crazy thing. This
Yeah.
mhm.
see church, and they're
Right.
trying to get a new church plant in Dallas, and I said no, um,
Mm.
to Jim, but I said I'd pray about it, and I had a friend of mine in the car at the time. We were at a conference, and he's like, "You're doing this." It's like everybody was making me do this, is how I felt. Like this whole journey of church planting, I feel like everybody else could see it, but I couldn't.
Hey
And then
Ben, real quick, that's you just told like my exact story of my first plant.
I didn't
Everybody
want
around me is like going, my wife, my pastor, they're like, we think this is what God wants. And I'm like, I didn't get the memo and I don't want to do this, you know? So
Mhm.
it's funny because like now I'm like, a second time offender and like directing a church planting organization, but I say I was a reluctant planter. But
Mm.
yeah.
well, think about it. I mean, we'd moved across the country,
Sure.
fundraise. I'd never done that before. So I uprooted a really great situation for my family in
Mhm.
Tennessee, took a huge pay cut. We come across, and Seattle land is not cheap. And
Mm-mm.
I mean,
No.
the sticker shock, it was at least 150, $200,000. And I was in a really nice half-acre historic mansion looking house when we left. Not mansion, but it was really nice, 2,500 square feet, something crazy like that. Nothing like that was in our price range in
Right.
in Maple Valley, at least. We moved to a place outside of Maple Valley because we couldn't afford it. But just talk about crazy change. And then when I get the call again, of course I'm going to say no. So I'm like,
Right.
I'm not doing this again. Even though, Jim was like, well, you're coming back, you're going to be close to the kids got grandparents. And it was like, he's putting all these hooks in me again.
Oh man.
And I said, look, I'll come and I'll pray, but I'll fast. That was usually what I did. And my buddy's like, you're doing this. I'm like, stop talking about this. So I drove down. I took Jackie and we drove, my wife. We drove down here, and it was immediate no again. And as I was driving through town, I happened to stop by a Starbucks and realized, okay, well, the town has a Starbucks. That's helpful. At that point, Dallas was growing. This is before
Up
the
and
big
coming.
crash.
Yeah.
Dallas was growing at a rate of 15 to 20% because nobody wanted to live in Salem and pay Salem taxes.
Right.
So things were being built like crazy. And I thought, okay, well, this checks some of the boxes. And again, everybody that I was asking to pray, I actually told everybody in my small group in Washington to pray for a no. I
Pray
don't
for it. No.
Pray for a no. That's
I
amazing.
didn't really want to preach. I didn't want to preach. I mean, I was a musician. So,
So what role were you in Maple Valley?
so we were there from the beginning. We were fundraising. I mean, Shane and Kathy, that's the lead planters. They got there 3 months before we did. So it was a pretty short ramp up. When he brought me in, it was like green light go. And so we were there when we were starting the first small groups and hitting the parks and everything. So it was kind of like it's crash course 101 for me in church planting. So I basically was the co-partner worship leader in that sense. Um, and so, yeah, I got to learn what it means to do ad campaigns and multiple touches and
Mm.
door campaigns. And
Raise money.
Seven
yeah, that's
stick.
kind of
Yeah.
like how, so I was clearly, and Shane was kind of learning too.
Mm.
So we are both kind of learning that bit together. I just never thought I would do the lead role. I was
Mm.
like,
Mhm.
this is crazy enough. And when it started taking off, I'm like, okay, well, Shane and Kathy are probably going to move on. And, Jackie and I will take the helm, and we know all the people. We have these great relationships. And then Shane and Kathy did not head out. So that was shocking to us. So it just didn't turn out the way I thought.
Mm.
And I'm thankful that we, said yes to the call to come to Dallas. I mean, our kids have had uh, great experiences. We were homeschooling, and then when they were about to get to junior high or in junior high, we gave the kids a choice. So I was still single income.
Mm.
It's tight, but Jackie was staying home with the kids, and
Mm.
Yeah, and this journey has been amazing. Thinking about 18 years, all the baptisms, all the marriages, and
Hmm.
as a church plant, you're not doing a lot of funerals yet. We're starting to do more of those. Um, Although people aren't doing them as much like
Hmm.
No,
normal.
I know it's
Right.
So
weird. Yeah.
bakes and bar memorials.
Barbecue, summer. We'll
Yeah,
do one in the
Yeah.
summer. We'll have a barbecue in their honor. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what?
it's the
January.
ministry has radically changed, I think, in that
Sure.
18
Sure.
years. I mean, we launched with the iPhones first,
Right.
and then the recession hit, so we lost a lot of money that had been pledged to us.
Mhm.
So when you're at the beginning, right, you're fundraising all that stuff, and we had the couple hundred grand or whatever, and then I just saw it starting to dwindle.
You're
Uh,
talking about the 2008 recession, yeah?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So
So
Ben,
what
real
was
quick before we fast forward into that, tell us real quick since we're talking about small towns, what's Dallas, Oregon like for someone that has never heard of that? Size,
Mhm.
um,
what's it like?
it's kind of it wouldn't be like it's like semi-rural, so most people aren't farmers here. They're commuting to Salem or Portland, believe it or not.
To
So it's
Portland?
like
Wow.
it's like a bedroom commute. I mean, it's starting to feel more like Maple Valley did in 2003, because you have a lot of people that aren't really they're here, but they're not here. They're kind of
Huh.
the commuters, and the big employers are the school district and Polk County government. Those are
Oh,
the
because you guys are the county seat, right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
Okay, so you got the
So you got
courthouse.
government workers, and then nobody's here during lunchtime. So a lot of those businesses are struggling. The downtown is a historic downtown, but it's they're struggling to kind of find their niche when so many people would rather just eat dinner in Salem if they're already there and
Hmm.
not come back to Dallas. So that's been a tricky thing for the marketplace here in town. Some businesses have come in. So economically, it hasn't hit its stride yet, but it's residential parts have just blown up
Hmm.
to the point where now we need more infrastructure because there's a lot more traffic, and um, there's this thing going on right now that there's chatter in the town because the city's going around and redoing all the corners
Oh,
of the
okay.
roads for, I guess, ADA compliance or whatever.
Mhm.
So you'll see this brand new beautiful corner and
Okay.
potholes everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know
So
what you're talking about.
going back just a little bit, when you finally hit that yes, what was some of the reasons with Jim even of like wanting to target Dallas? I mean, now it's, a bedroom community, but back then, 18 years ago, why Dallas of all places
Well, I
for a
mean,
church plant?
other than what I've already mentioned, right? They
Uh,
had, you're looking at the growth, the demographics, people are moving in. So that was good.
mhm,
Um, it was a fit because we were Oregonians,
mhm.
because we've had some problems with people kind of just really square pegging around hole type people because they're coming from a different region, and it's weird.
Right.
The other thing was with Dallas, we had a mother church. See, the church plant we did in Seattle, there was no mother church. There wasn't really that many churches around. Most of them were meeting in schools like we did.
Mhm.
So there wasn't, we were more of a parachute drop, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Maple
Mhm.
Valley, Shane and Kathy had never lived there. I'd never lived there. We just kind of flew in, dropped in, and started making connections. With Dallas, I thought it would be cool to try doing this with a mother church involved, because then we would have like maybe some core people come
People
over.
committing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so our core, setup and tear down team and all of that were from Monmouth Christian
Okay.
several years. And I wanted to do that. There was another thing too. Remember, I didn't really, I mean, I went to Bible college, but I never really, I didn't do a lot in leadership of the
Sure.
church
Sure.
before all this. So Monmouth at the time had this dream team staff,
Mm.
because they were doing pretty well, I think. I don't know what their numbers were, but it's a bigger
I think
church.
they were like 500 plus, weren't they?
Yeah.
In a
So we
small
had a
town.
lead
Yeah.
pastor who had been there a long time. I thought I could learn from him. Then they
Mm-hmm.
had like an associate pastor who was
Hmm.
really great relationally. And I thought I could learn that too. And
Yeah.
then they had like a Bible scholar
Hmm.
as their executive guy, I think. And I thought that's three people, because Shane and I were kind of at the same
Sure.
level. He didn't,
Kind
we
of a more well-rounded team there available.
could learn actually how to be a lead pastor
Oh,
from
that's
these
cool.
guys. And within a year, they were all like gone or two.
They were all
So that wasn't our, I don't think it was our fault. That,
I'm pretty sure it was you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that might be the story they tell.
I know
But
those guys. Yeah.
so it was kind of a bummer. I kind of felt like they all, for whatever reasons, they all went on to do different things. And I just felt like, I don't know that I still feel like I wish I could have grown up under their leadership.
Under the
Yeah.
tutelage a little bit. Yeah, you kind of had, if I remember right, you had kind of a lot of cooks in the kitchen on that one. You had like
Mm.
a sponsoring church, you had the sponsoring
2 or 3
organization.
organizations.
Yeah, E91
Wow.
was part of that, and
Yep.
CPA was part of that.
Media,
Wait, who did you say first? E91?
Yeah.
E91. They stopped
Oh, yeah.
doing it, but
Wow.
we were Church 47.
Okay.
So they were, I don't remember when they stopped counting, but
Yeah.
the Maple Valley church plant was
Mhm.
45, I think, or 44.
What was
So
the connection to E91?
Jim. So
Oh,
Jim
okay.
was actually on staff with East 91st Street Christian Church in Indianapolis.
Oh,
They
right, right.
moved him strategically to the Northwest.
Okay.
I think he had connections or family or something.
Yeah.
And so he was like their Northwest catalyst. And,
Yeah.
I would not be in planting. I wouldn't be in full-time ministry without Jim.
And E91 is one of those weird churches in the middle of the Midwest that's connected to everything. Because it's like Dave Smith was on staff there. He came down to Ozark while I was a student at Ozark and started a church planning class. And now the guy who's the lead pastor at East 91st Street, Rick Grover, I worked under in New Orleans when I graduated from Ozark. And now we're together in a covenant group that meets on a regular basis. So it's just like E91. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Like in Dallas, Oregon, a connection with E91 in Indianapolis. So
It's pretty
weird.
cool. I mean, it
So,
was great going back. They used to bring all the planters back,
Mhm.
and
mhm.
then we would all stand up on stage, and they would have what number we were, and then
Yeah,
the whole congregation would just like lose their
Wow.
minds.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Dude,
We
that's
really felt like,
exciting.
wow, we're doing something cool.
That's a great vision. We just brought like we have three planters we're working with, and we brought them all to the church where I'm the pastor at. And I'm telling you, the energy that people had off seeing, like when you talk about planting and then they see it, they're
Mm.
like, "We're actually doing this. It's exciting." And E91 had this vision, like Tony's talking about, to like reach the world for Jesus, and no one told them they couldn't, and they just decided
Yeah,
to go
yeah,
for it. And so
yeah.
yeah, we would always run into the guys like reps and planters and they're always trying to spin up projects in the Northwest. I think if I'm right, it's partly because they recognize that we're a very unreached region of the country, right? Wasn't that part of their vision?
That was part of it. I don't know where we rank now, but
Mm.
I mean, I'm guessing that we're kind of at a point where the coasts on either side are probably getting to that same situation where, well, the Northwest, I think traditionally has just been that independent, we're not
Right.
Mhm.
always the boss of us kind of thing.
Right.
Bet on me. And that's kind of the Northwest thing. So, and that's how this whole region probably got started in the first place, kick the
Mhm.
Russians out and every other people we're going to
The
take over
Russians.
and better not, that's like the Wild
Yeah.
West. And I think that mentality is still sort of here.
Yeah.
I remember trying to, back in the day, try to get like different ministry things that we saw going on and in the South that we saw at the church we were going to there. And it's like the difference between the two cultures is, when you see it, you really can tell.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Independence and
So for the sake of our time, let's kind of focus for a second on what would you say are some of the challenges of planting in a smaller community? A lot of churches we hear about, people or plants that people hear about are more in urban settings or larger population places. We're probably a little different in that we've kind of both been part of planting in smaller rural communities. What are some of the challenges you'd say to planting in a small context?
I think just processing it a little bit in my head. Uh, well, the obvious thing is you don't have the big population, so the scale is just by nature going to be smaller, generally speaking, and so that's a factor. It was kind of cool, I guess. So that may be a kind of negative-ish, but then on a positive note, when you're a new church coming in, or you're a new group of people trying to start a church in a smaller community, you have a lot of legacy churches that really have maybe hit their stride beforehand, and there
Right.
may be a few of them that are healthy, but a lot of them maybe are struggling. And so anything you do, like if you do any kind of events or ad campaigns or whatever, or it just seemed like everybody's like, whoa, the new cool thing.
Cutting edge,
It
yeah.
seems you could like you the splash seemed bigger in a smaller town.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like you could do the same thing, like we could have done it in Seattle or the Maple Valley,
Sure.
but like it wouldn't have had the same ripple effect.
Nobody would have noticed. Yeah. Yeah.
So it seemed like, if we were trying to do stuff, like we do something that we've done for several years, um, that draws maybe 60 to 80 students. It's a six-string club where I know how to play guitar. So we do this kind of 6 to 8 week in the evening. People can come learn guitar. We have guitars available that and the town talks about that every single time.
Hmm.
As the town gets bigger, that may be, again, the ripple may be less, but we won within the first 2 years of being here. Our church got an award from the Chamber of Commerce about the outstanding organization.
Of the year.
Wow.
Like we didn't do like we were just part of every kind of community thing. And I think in a bigger context, that would have been harder to have that.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Uh, Challenges to small community, religion is sports.
Yeah.
So that has been a fight. When third thing, maybe challenge commuters. They
Mm.
are kind of hard to reach. The bandwidth is just smaller for
Mm.
what they have freedom to do. I guess, well, they're choosing it, but it seems like weekend tournaments are a thing
Mhm.
starting when the kids are 7, 8 years old. It's crazy what we do to kids. We're running them ragged,
Mhm.
kind of living through them in our baseball dream. The chances of you doing that are like,
Right.
I mean, look,
Oh,
the chances of your brother playing in a Division 1, it's
you
just,
are
it's
singing
like getting
my
hit with
song
lightning
right now.
twice, you know? It just,
Man, that's every bit of challenge that we deal with right now. You are hitting and maybe that's the conversation, part of the conversation for the next uh, episode that we record here. But man, it's so tough with the sports and all the things,
it is.
And you're
especially in a rural community.
nobody's tradition. And
Yeah.
like in a bigger city, if there's a fallout, if someone leaves and they're unhappy, like they have no ability to harm you really. Like there's a million people in that area, and
Right.
someone that's a malcontent or bitter or grumbler or
Mm.
whatever can't really affect you. But in small communities, negativity can get out.
That was
If
the
you
next thing I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead. Go
Ah,
ahead.
yeah.
Carry on.
Well, I mean, this happened to me yesterday where a family completely ignored me when I was at, I don't know, where I was grocery shopping or something like that. And I was like waving and everything. And you have that situation where I don't think they left because they were offended. They just, it wasn't what they were hoping back in the day. I was kind of prepared for that, but it's to be completely, what's the term, gaslighted or ignored or something.
Ghosted.
Ghosted, so weird.
Ghosted.
Because like I know I made eye contact. Like,
Wrong.
and I wasn't trying to shy away from it. I'm this is awkward, but hey, we're, it's human being.
Yeah.
I can treat you with respect. Total, total like
Mm.
as if she didn't see that they didn't see. So it's funny because a lot of times the kids will like try to like wave.
Yeah. And then mom's like, don't do that. Well, now on the flip side,
Yeah.
if things are going well in a small community, the word gets out.
Yep.
Right.
When you do something good or you have a good encounter, man, people can really talk about the positive experience they've had in a small church. And
Oh,
why don't we close this episode down on that note, Ben? Tell
great.
us a couple highlights or like if someone's thinking about planting a church in a smaller community, what are some of the upsides of being a pastor in a small town?
Hmm.
I think a big one is you can rub shoulders with all the players. I mean, what is so cool about I mean, I whenever I call the chief of police, chief of fire, EMTs, mayor, all of those people are accessible. And
Hmm.
those relationships have really been fruitful. The school superintendent, I mean, these are people that I pray with, talk with regularly. I think in a bigger context, you're not going to have maybe as much access. And I think that is super cool.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It's a lot of times it's a great place to raise kids.
Yeah.
I mean, just smaller context. I mean, and think about a lot of people are commuting these days. I mean, I walked here this morning,
Mm,
and while I was doing that, I prayed with somebody that I saw on the street. So these are things that I think in a larger context, you just logistically it just won't happen.
mm,
Um,
mm,
I think you get a chance to be um, maybe a little bit old school, right? You get a chance to be that trustworthy person in town. You get to be the non-anxious presence,
mm.
and day in and day out. I mean,
I
here
like
it's
that.
18 years, and people know they can give me a call. I have calls from people all the time that I've just over time you just built a trust with,
Mm,
Do you think there's a
love that.
you lived in Nashville, you lived in kind of around Seattle. Is there a pace of life that you find that's better in the smaller communities? Or is the pace a little
Oh yeah.
slower?
I think, well, I mentioned the commuting thing, but I think breathing the air, slowing down, um, these are things that I didn't appreciate when I was younger, and I'm starting to really appreciate now that they're in a slower pace. There is more time
Hmm.
to be with people, and not everybody's willing, but we have people over to our house all the time, and I think when if people are commuting and they're not getting home till 7 or whatever it is, right? That whole rush, they're just exhausted,
Yeah.
and this smaller towns offer a pace of life I think that's a little bit more in line with how we're created,
Hmm. Hmm.
Kind of out of the rat race, out of the urban. I mean, we don't have like my town's a little bigger than yours, but we don't have traffic, and we don't have like long lines, and we don't have there's no commutes. Like we live in a small city in the middle of nowhere. And like there's like weeks where I don't leave our city, and it's like it's all the way across town. Well, 7 minutes. Uh, not a big deal, and it's like I found a pace of life here in Idaho in our small community that I really like. The young guys that I've recruited to work with us, they're also like they've come from Boise and different places and Phoenix, and they're like, it's like life just goes a little slower here, and it's a little more like you said, really important, more to I think how people are designed by our creator to live at a slower pace and not have every second of every day maximized and frantic and loud and uh,
And
so
I think
yeah,
people want to live in smaller towns now that you have the ability to do well, like we're doing right now.
yes, right
Right.
now,
Yeah,
exactly.
open
Yeah.
doors. It's weird because Skype just shut down officially,
Oh,
Oh,
really?
wow.
and they really missed the mark on the whole.
Man.
They did. They had a big chance and they
Because
blew it.
now this is like a work tool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a lot of people in our church that yeah, they may go to the office once a week or so,
Right.
but they're pretty much able to do most of their work.
We have a number of people here on the coast that work remote because they can. They want to live by the beach and they, don't want to live in the valley anymore. And
Mhm.
so they do. And it's great.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Well, guys, why don't we wrap this session and we'll come back for our next episode and we'll talk about more specifically about trends in church planting and the focus on discipleship and some of the shifts that I think Ben and I have seen as planters and people in the planting world since we both got started in the early 2000s. So why don't we wrap up for today? Thanks for listening. If you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe. If you're interested in Small Town Network, you can find us online at smalltownnetwork.com. And if you believe in the importance of planting disciple making churches in smaller communities, we'd love you to consider partnering with us in prayer and financial support. You have been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast.